Tammy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create this really easy DIY shirred dress. For this project I'm going to be using this really pretty green viscose fabric, and you're going to want to use a fabric that doesn't have any stretch because we're going to use elastic thread to create the shirring detail. So I have all my pieces cut out and this is the top of the dress, and what we're going to want to do is create a double folded hem all across one end, and this will basically give us a really nice neat finish. So if you do that across the whole top and stitch that in place. So I've just finished sewing the hem of the top all along the edge, which took a while, but it looks really good. Now comes to the part where we're actually going to shear the top. So when we're shearing, we're going to want to use some elastic thread in the bobbin, and you're going to want to wind this by hand, which I've done already. I've used black thread because it's going to match better with the fabric that I'm using. So to shear the fabric, we're going to want to sew basically lots of lines of stitching, and that's going to create the shearing effect when we use elastic thread. I think I'm roughly going to sew maybe 20 lines all along this edge, and this is going to have to run all the way along the whole top piece, so this will take quite a long time, but in the end we'll be left with this really long piece of fabric and it will be sheared down into a really smaller piece. So some people actually like to mark on the shearing lines onto the fabric. I'm not going to do this for this exact one because this fabric is a bit slippery and markings probably won't come out quite nicely on it. So I've just put in the elastic thread into my machine, and that's the bobbin thread, and then this is the top thread. And essentially what I'm going to do is basically just sew long lines of stitches all the way down the whole top and repeat that on the rest of the fabric. And I'm going to use my presser foot to kind of guide where I'm going to sew, and then just align all the stitches to the previous. So you want to remember as well to sew on the right side of the fabric because the bottom thread is the black elastic and then the top thread will be a colour that matches your fabric. So yeah, let's get along with actually sewing this whole piece. So I've just finished shearing the whole top detail and you can see how much it stretches. This is what the front looks like, and then the back has the elastic thread that you can see all the different rows. And this took me roughly an hour and a half of constant sewing to do all the 19 rows, I think it was at the end. So what we're going to want to do now is take this to the iron and steam this, and that will allow this wrinkling effect to become even more tighter. So this is what the shirred piece looks like now that I've ironed it and steamed it really well. You can see it's gone in slightly and it looks really good. This is the actual front detail of it, and then the back again obviously has the elastic, and when you press this you want to make sure you press the right side. So now that's all pressed, what I'm going to do is actually overlock the side seams of the shirred top, and then we'll get to how we're actually going to make the skirt. So we're not attaching the top together, we're just going to overlock the edges. And then for the skirt, I've cut out 2 long rectangles, and the top section is basically your hip measurement divided by 2 and plus a few inches for a seam allowance, but I'll put the description of what exact measurements I use on the screen. So because this is going to have a side slit, we're going to actually finish the edges of the 2 pieces on the overlocker because we'll need to keep them free when we actually make the side slit details. I'll come back to you when I've done that. So to create the side slit just on the one leg, what I'm going to do is kind of match up the waist seam of the skirt pieces, and then I'm going to measure down to about 15 inches, and that's where I'm going to sew up until, and then I'm going to leave the rest of the skirt free, and then I will create the side slit. So I've just attached the skirt pieces at just one side seam, and then I've pressed it open and stopped where I want the side slit to start. And I've also pressed this open as well. So that's how that is looking like at the moment. So now that's all done, I think what I'm going to do is actually sew the side slit closed, and that how you do that is basically you sew up along here all the way down the side slit, and you want to make sure that you actually fold the seam under, and that makes this section nice and clean and finished. So now that we've done the side seam of the skirt with the split hem, what I've done is I've just taken the top edge of the skirt, which is going to be the waist, and we're going to place the right side of the top, so that's the side without the elastic showing, and we're going to stretch this and sew it to the actual skirt waist. Now you can try and pin this in place, but I've tried it already and it doesn't really work. So as I'm sewing it at the sewing machine, I'm literally going to section by section stretch as I go along and sew the entire skirt waist to the top hem. So this is what the dress is looking like now that I've attached the whole skirt to the bodice. And what we're going to want to do now is basically sew the whole side seam of the dress. And I've also decided I am going to do another side slit on this side. So I'm going to also repeat the same steps to make the second side slit. So this is the dress now that the side seams are sewn together. Now what we're going to want to do actually is just hem the bottom of the skirt. So with the side seams both done, with the side slits both done, now we're just going to want to literally fold the hem under twice, press that in place, and then sew that on the sewing machine. So the dress is nearly completed now. We've done the hem of the whole dress, and that is what it looks like, nice and clean. Now you can leave the dress here as it is because everything is finished, but what I'm going to do is add 2 straps to the top. We're going to need 2 rectangles, and I'll put the measurements of these exact details here on screen. So to create the straps, what we're going to do is actually take the strap with right sides together, and we're going to fold it in half, and then we're going to sew along the entire seam, and we're going to leave both ends of the strap open. So now that's completely pinned, what we're going to do is just sew along the entire seam, and that will create the strap. So I've just finished sewing the straps and I gave them a nice press after I turned them inside out. And all you have to do now is basically try the top on and figure out where you want the straps to sit. So what you'll need to do is just measure where you want them to sit and then pin them in place and sew them at the sewing machine. So I've just tried the top on and it's looking so good, and I decided that I'm actually going to place the straps 3 inches in from the side seams. So I've just pinned them in place, and now it's time to actually sew them at the machine. And once that's done, that will be the whole dress completed. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and subscribe to see more content from me.